Well, all praise he who schlocks behind the rose. Welcome, everybody. We are diving into the 1984 horror classic, Children of the Corn. Chris, from what I understand, this movie is based on a short story by Stephen King, which is based on true events that happened just down from where you grew up. Is that true?
Well, I don't know if it's actually the first part's true. And I don't know anything about the other part, except for I think he just picked a name out of a bucket, which just happened to be near where I grew up.
So you weren't one of the Children of the Corn, like it would have been.
Well, I mean,
time frame, right?
I mean, like mid to late 90s, I did listen to a lot of Corn, but
but you were also one of a youth of the nation.
Oh man,
interesting tidbit.
It's just like, yeah, Children of the Corn, Youth of the Nation, man. The 90s were
a lot going on in Western Nebraska.
But this was 80s. I had nothing to do with that.
You were in the 80s,
right? But I wasn't with the Children of the Corn then. That was I didn't run with those kids.
You weren't in the pack.
I don't know nothing about that. I got alibis.
So I'm actually pretty excited for the show. I'm going to spoil some things here right away. Spoilers for the entire movie, by the way. I don't think I really like this movie. I have more fond memories of it than I do of like actually watching the movie. So I think it's going to be interesting to talk about, because while I don't like the movie itself, I do like a lot of the things in the movie or around the movie. I don't know. So we'll kind of get on with the show here. The movie costs about $800,000 to make. Very cheap. It was originally supposed to have like a $1.5 million budget, which is still a low budget movie for.
But evidently someone needed some money for something.
Allegedly. That was during the height of Stephen King's coke addiction, and he wanted some more money, and he threatened to take his name off of it. So they bumped the overall budget down to $800,000. And looking at that, I think they did pretty well with that.
Pretty good for 84 and $800,000.
And it sort of turned out well. So let me back up here. Potentially one of the other reasons he wanted more money is because he was sour.
Because he didn't get to write the screenplay. Yeah.
And they're like, Steven doesn't understand how screenplays work yet. We will not be using his version. And so he got a little sour on it. Allegedly. But unfortunately, if he tried to stick it to him in any way, the movie made over $14.5 million back, so made it very successul.
Well, and the other interesting thing is this is the Stephen King property that has the most sequels.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
It's such a strange thing. Have you seen any of the others?
I have, but not fully, because when they were out, I was like too young to be allowed to watch them. But I think that like 2 and 3, I think those are maybe more of what I think of when I think of Children of the Corn. They seem a little more, I don't know, scary. I know that they got like scarecrow monsters and stuff in them, and I think maybe they hit like the standard horror a little bit more.
Right.
Whereas this, I don't really know where to put this movie.
Back on the shelf.
Back on the shelf. But it did spawn, quite a bit of things after that, which I would like to talk about in the schlock section once we get there. The way our show works is we talk about the good things in the movie, the bad things in the movie from our perspective, and then the schlocky things in the movie, kind of the big picture ideas or things that stuck out to us, or just things that we found were totally ridiculous. But first, we like to see who's in these movies and where we've seen them before, if they've been on the show before.
Yeah. So we'll go backstage first, and then we'll go to the actors. The director, Fritz Kirsch, I'm probably butchering his name, this was his directorial debut, and he didn't do a lot of. He did Tough Turf right after this, which is like a cheesy 80s action movie. But this is probably, the height of what he got done. George Goldsmith is the screenwriter, and what's interesting about him is that allegedly he took on the screenwriting job when they were not satisfied with Mr. King's draft, but he only has one credit before this, Force 5, and it's based on a screenplay by. So it's not even like the full thing. So it's interesting that really Children of the Corn is his first produced screenplay film, according to IMDb. He did Nowhere to Hide. After that, he did an episode of Hill Street Blues, did a movie in 87 called Blue Monkey, which that's a great title.
Yeah.
And he kind of ends in 94 with something called Midnight Raiders. Now, what made me smile about this is it's a Sega CD. Do you
say what?
Okay, so 93-ish, 94-ish Sega CD came out, and it had technology to play like video clips, right? So there was this like genre of interactive movies that are like really, really bad video games and really cheesy movies. The most famous one's called Night Trap. And so basically it's like a live action, really low budget horror movie version of Dragon's Lair, right? Where you you push left and you can go into this room and you see this slasher mutilating a woman, and then go out here. And they were slightly controversial, probably more so, but I was a kid, so I don't remember it too well. But I just remember like, oh my gosh, this is the new thing of cinemas, interactive movies where you can go in what room you want to go in. And I just love that, at least with IMDb, his last credit is a Sega CD game.
And then he left the biz.
He's like, this is it. Nothing gets better than this. But like, man, I just want to buy us both Sega CDs and do like editions where we just review these interactive movies.
I kind of want to do that.
Well, but that's it for Backstage. Actors, we're going to blow through a couple, and then we'll get to ones we probably want to talk about. The lead, Bert, Peter Horton, very, very familiar face. You've seen him in a lot of things. He had a long stint in a 90s, late 80s, early 90s sitcom called 30 something. And then he is a producer or executive producer on Grey's Anatomy. So both in front of the camera and behind the camera, done quite well for himself. Huge list of movies. Go through and like, oh, that's where I recognize him from. He's kind of one of those actors that he could have been a lead, but he's a great character actor too, and very enjoyable to watch. And then we have Vicky, who is Linda Hamilton, who had another movie in 1984. I don't think it was as popular as this one, but the Perminator, where she has this like perm.
I think it's called Cyborg.
Oh, that's it.
Something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. And
Terminator. It's Terminator, y'all.
It's Terminator. And then, she would go on to redefine it in 92 with T2. I love Linda Hamilton. I think she's a great actress. Mm-hmm. I wish she would have had more roles over the years, because she's always enjoyable to watch. She has a really full range where she can be just kind of the full spectrum of girl next door to full on ass kicking badass who will mess a robot up.
Yeah. When I think of like badass female leads, I think of Sarah Connor in Terminator 2. Like she's my standard.
Yeah. You close your eyes and she's like doing that one hand cocking the shotgun, and you're like, yep. Yeah. You can kill any robot ever. Then let's go to Josh Franklin, who played Isaac. Man, evidently he was 24 when he played this, but
that is insane to me.
Right? He looks like an old kid, not a young man.
Which I guess is why it was kind of perfect for that role. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna say it right now. I didn't like Isaac because I didn't believe that he could lead a cult because he was kind of a dork. And, and
Right.
they forgot the most important part of a cult is the charismatic leader, not
Right.
someone you want to stuff in a locker.
Yeah. He also went on to play Cousin It in the two 90s Addams Family movies.
Yes.
Yep. And then he played Isaac in Children of the Corn 666, Isaac's Return. And I believe he also has writing credit on that, which is really cool. It's like, remember that movie I was in? I want to just, I want to be in it again. I got an idea.
Right. And for
then,
those who don't know, that is the 6th installment. I don't think it's the 666th installment.
No, but it came out in 1999. And if you flip that upside down,
oh man.
Oh man. And so the last person I want to mention, and then you can mention whoever, but Malachi, man, he is my favorite. Courtney Gaines.
Dude looks like Gumby in this.
I love him in this. He was also in Back to the Future, but this is not my favorite role of his. My favorite role was 5 years later in The Burbs, where he plays Hans Kolpeck. Man, yeah, The Burbs is one of my favorite comedies of all time. It's such a great fun movie. If it's ever on Tubi, we're probably gonna do that. But
I think it might be.
Malachi is just the best part. Outlander.
I hated it. I hated most of this. I was like,
oh,
that kid's a dork too.
I'm a Malachi fan, and it might just be my love for him from The Burbs that like gives him a pass. But yeah, so do you want me to get into the good and the bad?
Yeah.
Or do you want to talk about a character?
Before I keep just saying all the stuff I hated in this movie, let's get into the good.
Okay. I need to do a spoiler before I get into my good.
Okay.
I also did not like this movie.
Oh, thank heavens. I'm not crazy. Because I see so many things where people are like, oh, Children of the Corn, it's classic, man.
It is a classic, but it's not a good movie.
Yeah.
So, and in Schlock, there's something I want to talk about this, but we'll get back to that. So good. I like the music. I like the children's choir. It's creepy. It's fitting. I like Linda Hamilton. I like creepy kids as villains. I like kids with weapons. It's creepy. I like the drawings. We can pull that up, the pictures. It's really interesting because this film, once I hadn't seen this forever, and I remembered the beginning really well, but after about halfway through, I didn't remember much of it. But this, when I saw her drawing the pictures and she's like, telepathic and seeing the future, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so Stephen King.
Yeah, there's so much Stephen King nonsense in this.
Evidently, this was something that the screenwriter added. This was not in the short story.
Okay.
Which is super interesting. But I like that it's in there because it's creepy, especially when they have the whole wall of them and you're going down and you see all the things. And then it was cool to do like the transition shot where it's the yellow car outside of the motel and then it like cuts to that same shot. I also like that it's a device to keep these two kids who might have normally been killed in the story, and it plays to like the family themes with the couple who enter it. These kids actually weren't in the short story either. So
right, yeah, the short story was apparently a lot darker. The main characters die
right
in the end. Spoiler, very brutally.
Right, and so and then I'm going to be on the fence about a couple things. I don't know if they're good or bad, but they stuck in my mind. The narration, that's an interesting choice. The dreamlike and nightmare logic and the visual style, it's very dreamy. And I think sometimes that works and sometimes it really doesn't work. Like when they're getting lost on the way to Hemingford and they keep ending up like, we're closer to Gatelin, we're closer. Like, that doesn't make any real logic. Like these kids might have killed a town and have a cult of kids, but they're not changing the laws of physics and maybe he who walks behind the corn is, I don't know. And then I loved the ending. the very, very ending where they punch the girl in the car, and then they're like, now what? And then like, send her a postcard, and then it cuts to like a wide shot, and it feels like the director had said cut, and that they were just standing around like half in character, half not in character, like not sure what to do. And the credits just hold on this, like, it's not a static shot. It's just them kind of fumbling around and walking a little bit, and like
they sort of leave.
Right. Slowly. It's like the end of some like small town theater plays where like we can't afford a curtain, so everyone just stop and the play's over. And now we're just kind of walking around and like, what do we do?
It's like, everybody stop looking at us. Just go home now.
Right.
Our curtain doesn't work.
And that's the feeling I got at the end of this. And man, I loved it.
I had a pretty big chuckle when he like hits the girl with the door and knocks her out. And he's like, whoa, boy. And like,
now what do we do? Send her a postcard.
But I was like, this is a terrible ending.
That was my favorite part of the movie.
I mean, I laughed, and I like laughing. It was a bad ending.
So bad. The logic doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's slow. It's melodramatic. So while I like the music, I don't like a lot of the music cues and how they use the music in it. It felt very made for TV movie.
Yeah.
Where it's these long transition shots with like kind of like generic orchestral music, which would be pretty in a certain scene, but it just felt like almost like filler before the commercial or after the commercial.
Right.
And that's a very 80s thing. And I'm guessing it had to do with their budgetary constraints. So a lot of the music cues just made it feel cheap. And it was made on the cheap. So I get that, but like, it contrasted with how much I actually liked the music itself with the children's choir and different things. I didn't like how diffused the bad guys were. Like, so your problem with Isaac. Yeah, he's a weak villain. We can bring up his picture. He's creepy looking, which is a great start. I love his intro. You see him like watching there from a distance. He's like, oh, I do also like the opening. It's a fun way to start a movie of like kids locking these old people in and killing them. It also doesn't make a lot of sense, but I still liked it. But yeah, he's creepy looking, but there's no charisma. There's no, why are we following this kid?
Right. Yeah.
And so, yeah, go ahead.
Well, just speaking of this intro, if we can just get the picture up of weird, I can't remember what the picture is called, but when the kids are like pulling out all of their weapons and this guy has like a knife taped to his arm.
There's so many other places to hide a knife. You in a small town in rural America, you probably wouldn't even have to hide the knife. You probably just like walk in with
jeans.
It. Yeah.
Anyway.
And also, like, why are you poisoning half the people and then like slaughtering the other half? Like, it's
a very confusing intro because the majority of the people that you see doing the killing, it's more like teenagers of the corn. Like when I think children,
they're all they're all about to hit their 19th birthday and they're gonna go be with the one who walks behind the corn.
Right.
So Isaac was not a good bad guy, and then Malachi takes over halfway through, and I like Malachi more because he's unpredictable. When he kills the old man and the dog, even though they have an agreement, and Isaac chastises him, and then he turns on Isaac. What I like about that is that he's a more chaotic character, so you don't know what he's going to do. Isaac feels very crazy, but also by the book.
Yeah.
Right. So while I don't think Malachi is a perfect villain, I liked that he took over.
Yeah, he would make a better leader because at least he has fear on his side, whereas Isaac.
But then they both die at the end of Act 2, and you're left with this nebulous monster that lives in the cornfields.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there are better ways to transition from three different antagonists, but I don't think they did it very well.
Yeah.
And that's really all I got before we get into schlock.
Well, so I think that's a good question. This nebulous corn monster, like, what do you think what is he who walks behind the rows?
Well, so I don't think
we got a picture of him.
Do we? Oh yeah.
The closest we can get, right? They blow up the cornfield.
Right.
And we see like a face in the cloud. And so I don't know, this takes my mind in a lot of different places. And this is actually what I did like about the movie, is that like I think they created a really fun world to like imagine and play in,
100%,
and create story in.
100%. And I want to get to that point in schlock. But yeah, I don't know what he is. I don't think they know what he is. Now there's a shot, we don't have it, but when the main guy is in the school and he sees the picture of his girlfriend on the corn cross, and there's this fire-breathing dragon flying there, and I'm like, that coupled with the shot of like this worm-like tremors ripple, right? I was thinking like it was this like sea serpent like dragon thing that like lived in the cornfields, like a literal like beast.
That would have been cool,
and I'm like,
man.
That would have been so cool. And then you see him again, and it's that snake-like ripple, and you have the image of children, and you have all the Christian icons and symbols, and so then the serpent really plays into that. And I think I haven't read the short story, but I would be interested to see if it's an actual creature, because once it comes up, it's this, we have a picture of the cornification. It turns into this like light source that like crawls up the Isaac and then like absorbs him. So that is he who
possesses him.
Yeah, possesses him. So then it becomes like a spiritual thing. And then he's controlling the weather, and he has some like, he's using corn like Evil Dead uses tree limbs. So it's kind of kitchen sinky by the end. And sometimes Stephen King kind of has that vibe.
Well, in the short story, the monster is described as, I believe, having it's green with red eyes, and that's the only description you get.
Like a dragon in rural America. Rural. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
That'd be really cool. Yeah.
So
what do you think it is?
Well, are we in schlock?
We're in schlock, and we're running over, and we're just gonna go with it. This feels like
we're just gonna talk about this one.
We're gonna go all night.
Yeah, so I don't know what it is. I like the name, He Who Walks Behind the Rows. That's a name that's like it's something indicative of like personality, right? If it was just like a regular god or something, they would just say God, and they do, but then they give him like this kind of honorific that I think is a really interesting image, right? There's this idea that like you can't look at God directly, otherwise you'll die. And then there's this idea, he who walks behind the rows of corn, right? So there's kind of this idea that you could potentially see this entity like moving out in the cornfield that's always like obscured. And I think that they really try and play on this fear of like, you get into a cornfield and it's like super high and your visibility is very cut off and you can't exactly see around you. I mean, you could get lost in a cornfield.
I have.
Yeah, it happens a lot where you're from. But I like the idea of it being like a spiritual entity rather than just a straight up monster. I do like the idea of a dragon, and like you said, with that Christian imagery, like the serpent, the beast, the dragon.
Right, and they could still have it being both, where it's like, because they have the girl with the telepathy, like with the sight. So this dragon could still have otherworldly abilities, but they would be a little less everywhere.
Yeah. Well, I guess what I'm saying is that it could just very easily be Satan, right?
It totally could be,
they're
but
Satanists.
yeah, it could also be Wizard of the Oz. It's that villain behind the thing. But yeah, it's Satan totally.
The problem that I have with this is that it's hard to kind of figure out what the tenets of their religion is. Like what, okay, so they're still like using like Christianized language, right? And it seems that they came out of some sort of Christendom, some sort of sect of Christianity in some way, because they're still like using the Bible. They dress like they're Amish. They're using the same type of language as like King James English or whatever. But it's something that is so wholly different from Christianity. It's like what is it exactly that you believe in? And when they do the corn stuff, to me that says this is something more pagan, more like earth earth entity, or perhaps Native
the feast
American.
and the harvest.
Yeah. So is it paganism? Is it Christianity? Is it Satanism? Like I would just like a more developed
right. And maybe in the short story we get it. I who knows? It feels like he who walks behind the rose is some kind of pagan deity who is taking these young Christian this young Christian sect and like warping their minds and leading them astray. And it's this hybrid religion.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a bizarre religion too, because it's again, I should read the short story to be able to like compare and contrast, but like we can pull up the Blue Man. So they have crosses, right? Mm-hmm. Which is very Christian heavy symbology, but then they're made of corn stalks, which is again that kind of pagan earthy vibe. Also, like love they call him the Blue Man, and he's a cop, and it's like this withered skeleton, very schlocky, very fun.
Yeah, but they're not stupid, right? They know it's a cop. Like
they know it's a cop. It's just they're naming him that honorific you were talking about of like keeping everything. It's very culty to like rename everything and then only use those names, right?
Right.
So like, we're not going to say cop anymore. We're going to say the Blue Man because he is a false idol. Because you have that spray painted false idol when he's in the cop shop. Mm-hmm. But then we also have the corn bowl of blood. And this is where the movie goes off the rails for me, because it's A, hilarious, but B, really messed up. And it just makes the whole thing doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, so he wants the kids to go kill the entire town, but then when the kids turn 19, he wants them to sacrifice them to him, but then he wants the kids to like exist and not get caught. And
like, what was their end goal?
Yeah, exactly. What like you've got to think that a pagan deity in this day and age would have some knowledge of how the world works.
I don't know.
Maybe not, but it feels like, yeah, kill the whole town. And then, come out here and sacrifice. And then like, what happens when all the kids age out? He's still behind the corn?
Well, in the short story, he tells them to be fruitful and multiply prior to turning 18.
Gotcha.
So a lot of some very typical Stephen King stuff going on.
Right. It's just lots of it doesn't make any sense. And then, I mean, having the old guy who's like, don't go to Gatlin. Like, is that enough to keep people out of this ghost town that like looks like it got attacked by like 100 slashers?
Well,
like, and it's not on the map.
I think it's really interesting. I just think that they picked like the wrong part of the story, because I think it's much more interesting to see like the development of all this. Like I would like to see the story of a new kid moves to town and he starts
turning everyone.
They gotta kill someone, like keep it quiet until they can get their numbers up, and right. And it's this cult taking over and what their plan is and how they're going to carry it out. And
yeah, and like the end game for He Who Walks Behind the Rose, and it just, so much of it just feels like, oh, that's an interesting image, or that's creepy, oh, let's throw it in. So
right,
what I want to get to, I want to ask you this. There are movies where the concept is cooler than the movie and no version of it has quite done it justice, even if you like the movie. So Children of the Corn is an example. There's a cool movie in there.
Mm-hmm.
It has not been done yet.
And have you seen all of them?
No.
Most of them?
No, I've seen 2 of them, but I'm just going to say it's not been
put
done.
Out another challenge. We're going to watch all these and find the best one.
Right. So here we go. Highlander. I like the first Highlander movie, but it's not a great movie. The concept is cooler than the execution.
Mm-hmm.
There has never been a Highlander movie that does that concept justice.
Right.
Right. Predator. You have the first Predator, which it does a great job, but it's still such a great
on hollow ground.
No, I love the Predator. Let's take the Predator out, but anything after that, the concept is cooler than the executions.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many movies where you're like, man, that's such a cool story that you love. You're going to forgive it. You're going to cut it slack because the concept is so cool. And I think that while this movie and this concept is not as cool as Predator or Highlander, it's a really cool concept and there's a great movie in there. And so there are parts in it that you love and the idea of it you love and are at least intrigued by, if not loved. But are there anything else come to the top of your head that kind of fits that bill?
I would argue that like that's most of the movies we review on here. I mean, we can find like a kernel of something cool inside them. Like, yeah, that's a pretty interesting idea.
I mean, there are cool bits of all the movies you review, but I'm talking about like wholesale. Like that's a really cool concept. That is not a good execution, or it's an okay execution.
Yeah. Well, let us know in the comments or the reviews or wherever you're at checking this out. We are running out of time. Yeah, carrier pigeon.
If a pigeon lands near me and it's got a piece of paper on its ankle, I will read it and I will respond.
With another carrier pigeon.
Yep.
So that is all the time that we have for today. Chris, we're going to meet again in 2 weeks. What is the movie that you have chosen for us?
Well, we're going to do a repeat. We're going to do Fright Night 1980s or the remake of Fright Night. And you guys get to decide again on Instagram.
Ooh, on Instagram. All right. Doing a good old Instagram poll. So check us out. It's at Compelled by Schlock. That's our at. That's our handle. So check that out. And if you're not on Instagram, just shoot us a message. Just shoot us a comment and let us know. I am Darby Ellis Wilson. This is Chris Anonymous.
Schlockity schlock.
And
schlock.
Don't let
Compelled by
Schlock.
Schlock.
Guys.
Schlock. Schlockity schlock. Schlock. I am compelled by schlock. Compelled by schlock. Compelled by schlock.
Wait, no.